Welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron. A leading political analyst is calling out her fellow liberals. She says they're intolerant, especially when it comes to conservative viewpoints. Kirsten Powers warns that some on the left are trying to suffocate free speech, and she says the country is moving in an authoritarian direction. Heather Sells spoke with her about the trend, which she explains in her new book.
The United States may have strong protections for free speech in the First Amendment to the Constitution, but USA Today columnist and Fox News commentator Kirsten Powers says in reality that freedom is facing a serious threat.
In her book, Powers, a lifelong liberal, says her fellow liberals are behind today's attacks on free speech. She calls it a systematic silencing.
They call themselves liberals, but they're completely illiberal. So they are people who just really believe that their ideology and their partisan viewpoints are the right way, and that anything that deviates from that needs to be silenced. And they don't want to debate it. They don't want to have a conversation about it. They want you to shut up.
That shutting down of ideas, says Powers, is everywhere. It is accomplished by delegitimizing and demonizing those with unpopular views or just opinions that liberals don't like. In her book, Powers cites what she calls a vicious smear campaign against Chick-fil-A President Dan Cathy for saying he supported traditional marriage. She warns of college campuses that have booted Christian clubs for supposed discrimination when all they did was hold fast to biblical beliefs. And she says everyone should be concerned about the firing of Brendan Eich, the head of the internet company Mozilla, for his donation to a California measure supporting traditional marriage.
That was in 2008, and it's what Barack Obama thought. And Barack Obama was at Rick Warren's church saying that he opposed same-sex marriage for religious reasons. So what's the thing today that in 5 years is going to get you fired?
Powers, who found Christ 9 years ago, says friendships with fellow believers have opened her eyes to attacks on conservative and Christian viewpoints. Perhaps her biggest concern, a left-wing culture at universities that squashes open and honest civil debate. Powers cites the feminist professor in California who called pro-life demonstrators terrorists and stole their sign.
What's happening is extremely authoritarian, even though it's not the government. It's an attitude that we know best, and we're going to tell you what you're allowed to think or say. And if you don't do what we think or say, then we're going to destroy your reputation and maybe get you fired and maybe make it so you can never work again.
Powers says the stakes are huge. If attacks on free speech go unchecked, she worries that society could shift to groupthink and reject any dissent.
I just don't think that probably most young people have any idea what that does to a society, that you cannot have freedom without being able to disagree.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Now, Powers says she won't be surprised if the people she calls illiberals, try to silence her by working to destroy her credibility. She says such a move would make her point about how some on the left are trying to shut up those who disagree with them. The U.S. military is planning an unprecedented training exercise this summer called Jade Helm 15 in 7 states, in towns and private lands. And with polls showing trust in the government near record lows, that exercise has many Americans feeling uneasy. Jennifer Wishon brings us that story.
Have you heard of this military special operations command exercise called Jade Helm?
Speculation about why the military wants to train in American communities instead of military bases is fueling a growing number of theories across the internet and social media.
The government will take action when it thinks its authority is threatened.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has even asked his National Guard to monitor it. So what is Jade Helm 15? It's realistic military training taking place simultaneously in 7 states, from Southern California to Texas. Over 8 weeks, the nation's elite special forces will practice unconventional warfare by operating outside their normal support systems, adapting to new terrain, and working with civilians to gain their trust. When news of the operation broke, the phones inside Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert's office lit up.
At first, people were not sure what to think. Do we have to worry about martial law? Is our federal government coming in and going to practice imposing martial law on Texas?
A former Army captain, Gomert says he understands the need for training, yet it bothers him that as part of the exercise, the military is labeling Texas, Utah, and Southern California as hostile.
This is actually taking areas of our home country, the United States, and saying Texas is hostile, Utah is hostile, Southern California is hostile, and we got to take it back from the hostiles. I find that incredibly offensive.
And he thinks it's no coincidence that the Jade Helm 15 map looks an awful lot like the 2012 political map. So-called hostile states are colored red. The suspicion surrounding Jade Helm 15 is fueled by the fact that a vast majority of Americans simply don't trust the government, a level of mistrust that has peaked under the Obama administration, driven by what many believe to be violations of the Constitution and civil liberties. This is what Americans understand war looks like, but Cheryl Chumley, author of Police State USA, says Jade Helm 15 is introducing a new type of warfare, the master of the human domain.
What's going to happen is the special operations soldiers are going to be dressed in civilian clothes, driving civilian vehicles, and they're going to be tasked with striking up rapport with the local citizens.
It's a new strategy to root out terrorists since locals notice odd behavior first. In Jade Helm, citizens are part of the exercise.
Watch out, because that guy that strikes up a conversation with you at the local 7-Eleven, is he a Jade Helm 15 participant? You know, it's a psychological warfare that it kind of messes with your mind a little bit.
White House spokesman Josh Earnest says special forces moving about communities will wear armbands.
I feel confident in expressing to you, without having a lot of detailed knowledge of the particular exercise, is that the civil liberties and constitutional rights of American citizens will be in no way affected by this exercise.
Despite conspiracy theories, Congressman Gomert isn't worried that the U.S. military is going to issue martial law, but he's not happy with the president.
When my own commander-in-chief, through his subordinates, is just fine with, for games purposes, declaring an enemy of 2 or more of your states, I've got a real problem with that. That is one of the most insensitive, there's outrageous things that a military commander could do.
Chumley urges Americans to always stay vigilant when it comes to the government.
What I love most about America is that our rights come from God, not government. And I think we need to hold fast to that principle, because once that's gone, then you just open the doors to more and more government encroachments.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Free-range parenting has become a hot topic of this discussion since one Maryland couple got in trouble for letting their kids walk home alone from a park. The parents were investigated and charged with neglect. But as I found out, support for this type of parenting is growing. Danielle and Alexander Maytive made national news after police picked up their 10- and 6-year-old children who were walking home from a park without adult supervision. The couple, who believe in a hands-off approach to raising their kids, are part of a movement called Free Range Kids, which encourages children to be independent and self-reliant. The Maytives were charged with neglect.
They believe that this is the right way to raise their children.
The Free Range Kids movement has sparked national debate about parenting and raises questions about how much freedom children should have and the rights of parents to raise their kids how they see fit. Lenore Skenazy of New York founded Free Range Kids. She says parents who allow their children to play outside alone shouldn't be treated like criminals. In 2008, she was named America's Worst Mom for letting her 9-year-old son ride the subway by himself.
It was a sunny Sunday, and I let him take the train home. And I wrote a column about it in the newspaper I was working for. And 2 days later, I found myself on every possible television show. I felt he was ready, and he felt he was ready.
Critics argue that free-range parenting is irresponsible and puts kids at risk.
A 10-year-old should never be in charge of a 6-year-old.
Skenazy blames the media hype surrounding highly publicized abduction cases for making parents afraid and overprotective.
It just starts feeling like 24/7 on television. You can see a child being kidnapped, and so it feels like 24/7 if you open the door and let your kid outside, that's what's going to happen. It's really hard to keep any kind of perspective when the only story about kids that you see on TV is children in danger.
Supporters of the movement say the number of missing children and stranger abductions are down from previous years.
The free rangers are right. Crime is down and serious stranger abductions are relatively rare.
But experts say,
I think you have to think about, where do child predators go? And as a therapist, I'm very aware of the minds of child predators. And they look for parks, they look for public places, they look for kids away from the watchful eye of a supervising parent.
Meanwhile, parents say they should be allowed to raise their children as they choose, free range or otherwise.
It's balancing that right of the parent to make a quick judgment versus the state stepping in.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Up next, biking benefits. Our next story might make you think about ditching your car and taking a bike to work instead. Stick around and find out why. What makes people overweight? Not getting enough exercise? Not so, says a group of health experts, including cardiologists and sports experts. They say the real cause of the obesity epidemic is sugar and carbohydrates. Writing in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, they say poor diet causes more diseases than a lack of physical activity, alcohol, and smoking combined. They point out that people are just as active now as they were a few decades ago, but the obesity rate has skyrocketed. They write, this places the blame for our expanding waistlines directly on the type and amount of calories consumed. And they add, let us bust the myth of physical inactivity and obesity. You cannot outrun a bad diet. Well, one of the most photographed fitness models in America, Kim Dolan-Leto, is speaking out about the one thing that took her from overweight in her 30s to the cover of the top fitness magazines in her 40s, her faith in God. Leto's book, 10 Steps to Fit, brings a message of hope and empowerment to people struggling with their weight. FIT stands for Faith-Inspired Transformation and teaches readers how to get healthy, happy, and fit God's way. It emphasizes spending time with God, treating one's self with care, renewing one's mind, and an eating plan. She illustrates on how combining faith with fitness is the, quote, key to finding strength and results that last.
If you're not speaking to yourself the way that you would your best friend or someone you greatly love and respect, you need to change that conversation. God does not want you walking around berating yourself. You were created on purpose for a purpose. That it's unacceptable the way that women talk to themselves. And it hurts me because each one of us, we're not supposed to be the same. I think that somehow we miss that. We can't all try to look the same. Mm-hmm. We need to just be who we are and shine in who God created us to be.
And you'll want to watch the rest of that interview on our website, cbnnews.com. Leto also appeared on the 700 Club with Wendy Griffith, and you can find that interview on cbn.com. Well, as the price of gas rises again, more people are taking up biking as an intelligent alternative to driving. CBN News' own lifelong bike commuter Paul Strand checked out some of the reasons during this year's National Bike Day to work.
The addition of thousands of miles of bike lanes and trails in recent years have made many Americans feel biking's now a safer alternative. Chemicals released biking make you feel happier and less stressed. It boosts energy levels 20%. 56-year-old bike commuter Nick Bauer.
And I get into work and it's just, I feel great, so that is a tremendous positive. I mean, I feel energized and, that's a great way to start the day. Beautiful morning like this.
It just gets all the juices flowing. I feel really relaxed when I get into the office after having a nice bike ride into work.
Many people say the thought of showing up at their job all sweaty keeps them from pedaling in. Washington, D.C. bike commuter Mike Goodnow says you can deal with that.
It's not usually a problem, only on the really hot days, but usually you can just slow down a little bit and dress appropriately and it's fine. Even if it is, a lot of offices now have showers.
So why might you want to consider biking? What if I told you it could save your life and save you a fortune? First of all, the health benefits. In their first year, most bikers lose about 13 pounds, burning 500 to 700 calories an hour. What's that lead to? Well, heart disease is the #1 killer in the world. Bikers cut their risk of heart disease by 50%. If every American replaced 3 miles of driving with 3 miles of biking every day, 300,000 fewer of us would die of heart disease every year. As for the money, you drivers pay about $11,000 a year for your transportation. Bicyclists, $350 a year. $11,000 versus $350. You drivers, you work about 2 hours every day to pay for your transportation. We bicyclists, we work about 10 minutes to pay for ours. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, they used to be treated as useless and annoying. Now they're called angels. See the beautiful story of a changing society in Taiwan when we come back. There once was a time when children with disabilities in Taiwan were referred to as useless. Traditional social values caused many parents of those children to feel ashamed. But that's all changing. Here's David Mims to tell us why.
Chalchen Lean and Waiwei Shou were ashamed after they had 2 children born with disabilities. Then they found God and realized that their children really were special, angels in every sense of the word. To help other parents who have children with physical or mental disabilities, they established Angel Heart Family Social Welfare Foundation. And each year since, the group sponsors the Angels Day event to encourage families in similar circumstances to publicly acknowledge their own children as angels.
For all the parents out there, I understand your hard work. But the doors have now opened. So let us begin this journey together.
The event is 6 years old, and this year almost 3,000 families joined in, with the full support of the government and the Military of National Defense. All divisions of the armed forces were on hand to interact with the children.
Next up, here are the Hammers. There are 2 angels on every Hammer, and they are here to salute their parents.
Here is the Angel Company. Let's put our hands together for them.
Here's another company. This event really is a dream come true.
I am very emotional inside. Today they are just like any other normal kids, marching just like the military. Even walking in front of us really made my heart melt. It is not often that we get to have interactions like this. To watch our kids show their appreciation by saluting their parents today was tremendous.
Parenting is hard. Being parents of these angels is no exception. But what they've done here today, all those feelings of hard work was turned into inspiration and happiness.
In Taiwan, 6 to 9% of children are born with disabilities. Chochin talked about how the organization came about. It all started with an autistic child and his mother on the bus. The child was acting up, and they had to withstand the scornful looks from other bus riders who showed no empathy. The story made Chao Chin upset, and he vowed to use the hand of God to help the public understand more about angels and learn the lessons of friendship and acceptance. Later, that same parent told him another bus story with a different ending.
A parent came to me and said her kid was running around on the bus. She apologized to the driver, and much to her surprise, he said, "It doesn't matter. Kids this age should be out having fun." And everyone on the bus applauded. The parent told me she cried. This was the second time she cried on the bus. The first time, she was forced off the bus with her kid. But this time she cried because she felt accepted. Society is changing for the better.
The slogan, "The parents' first step is the hope for the kids," is not just for the family in Taiwan having kids with special needs, but for all Chinese out there, wherever you are, you can live a life of an angel's heart, so that the families that do need help can come to understand that there is hope and you do have it in you to break through.
The Angel Heart Family Social Welfare Foundation started with a vision of one couple, but has grown to encompass thousands. And with God leading the way and faith like the parable of the mustard seed, founders believe it will spread throughout the Chinese world and beyond. I'm David Mims, CBN News.
For many students, the typical college experience includes studying, staying up way too late, late-night pizza runs, and the list goes on. But for one pair of animation students at Regent University in Virginia, they have some bigger goals in mind. They're creating a video game called The Garden of Eden that they hope will make a big impact on the gaming industry. CBN News social media and technology contributor Caleb Kinchlow caught up with some of them in the newest episode of Digital Download.
I spoke with some Regent students who are setting out to prove that the best games don't have to have a mature rating to be fun and entertaining. Their game is called The Garden of Eden.
We don't just want to be animators for other people. We want to be animators to bring to life our own projects and to tell a Christian story or a story that has a redemptive theme to it.
And the Garden of Eden team hopes to have the project completed by December 2015. You can go to our website to watch the rest of that digital download episode. Well, make sure you watch CBN News on the 700 Club next week. On Monday, David Brody talks with recently announced Republican candidate Marco Rubio. Rubio talks openly about how his faith drives public policy positions on social issues like traditional marriage.
Family is the original cell of society. In essence, it is the first and most important government. It's the first church. The family is the singular most important institution in society. It existed before government. It existed before laws.
And Rubio shares with us why he feels now is the time for him to throw his hat in the ring for the 2016 presidential seat. You won't want to miss that on Monday's 700 Club. Well, that's all for this hour of the CBN News Weekend. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. Hope you join us next time. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless.